Hello there, and thank you for stopping by. Today, we're stepping back in time to explore a strange, shadowy corner of the Roman Empire, where luxury and debauchery weren't just pastimes, but a full-time profession. Have you ever heard of an orgy planner? Not a joke. In ancient Rome, there were people who made their living orchestrating nights of indulgence, where power, lust, and politics swirled together like red wine spilled across cold marble floor. Forget the romanticized images of Rome in movies, white togas, gentle harp music, noble ideals. The truth? It was far messier. Imagine being the one in charge of every bed, every jug of wine, every knowing silence as imperial secrets were whispered in candlelit corners. If you find yourself drawn to the raw and rarely told parts of history, feel free to leave a like or subscribe. Only if you truly enjoy what I'm doing here. By the way, where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? I always love to know little things like that. Now, turn off the lights. Let a soft fan hum nearby, and join me on a slow descent into a Roman night, where morals were a myth and people like us could only watch from the shadows. You awaken before dawn, the air thick with the scent of myrrh and the distant echoes of a city that never truly sleeps. Rome, in all its grandeur and decay, stretches out before you, a labyrinth of power, pleasure, and peril. Today is not just another day. It is the day of the grand banquet, and you are the unseen maestro orchestrating the symphony of decadence. A letter lies on your bedside table, its seal broken, the parchment still bearing the faint aroma of rose oil. It's from Domitia, the wife of your patron. Her words are sharp, a reminder of the previous mishap. The golden petals instead of the demanded crimson. Do not err again, she warns. The weight of her expectations presses upon you, heavier than the marble columns that line the atrium. The guest list is a volatile concoction. Senators with egos as vast as the empire, artists seeking patronage, philosophers hungry for debate, courtesans weaving their own webs of influence, and a mysterious figure rumored to be of royal blood. Each guest a potential ally or adversary, each seating arrangement a strategic move in this intricate game. The triclinium must be transformed into a realm of opulence. The couches, arranged in a harmonious U-shape, await their occupants. The table, soon to be laden with delicacies, stands as a testament to Rome's reach, from the oysters of Britannia to the dates of Arabia. Every detail, from the angle of the cushions to the placement of the silverware, must be impeccable. Entertainment is paramount. You've secured Sira, the flautist whose melodies once silenced a room of bickering senators. Dancers, acrobats, and poets are scheduled to perform, each act timed to perfection. Yet, the memory of the last banquet lingers. A spilled amphora of garum, the ensuing chaos, the whispers that followed. Failure is not an option. The menu is a culinary odyssey. Appetizers of honeyed dormice and spiced olives will precede main courses of roasted peacock, its plumage restored for dramatic effect, and wild boar glazed with fig sauce. Desserts of honey-drenched pastries and exotic fruits will conclude the feast. Each dish a statement, each flavor a note in this grand composition. As the sun ascends, casting golden hues upon the city, you move through the villa, directing slaves, adjusting arrangements, tasting sauces. The aroma of saffron and roasted meats fills the air, mingling with the tension that builds with each passing moment. Guests begin to arrive, their togas flowing, their expressions a mix of anticipation and scrutiny. Lucius Calpurnius Piso strides in, his gaze assessing, his demeanor demanding. Behind him Aurelia, his estranged wife, enters uninvited, her presence a spark near a powder keg. The banquet commences. Laughter, music, and the clinking of goblets create a symphony of indulgence. Yet, beneath the surface, currents of ambition and rivalry swirl. A senator whispers a veiled threat. A courtesan shares a knowing glance with a royal guest. A poet recites verses that cut deeper than any blade. Midway through the evening, a commotion arises. A dish is delayed. A performer falters. A guest complains of a draft. You navigate each crisis with practiced grace. Your mind a whirlwind of solutions. Your face a mask of calm. As the night deepens, the boundaries blur. Wine flows freely. Inhibitions fade. Secrets slip. Alliances form and fracture. Desires ignite and extinguish. The banquet becomes a microcosm of Rome itself. Glorious, chaotic, and perilously balanced. Dawn approaches. The first light, casting long shadows across the triclinium. Guests depart, some arm in arm, others alone, their expressions reflecting satisfaction, intrigue, or discontent. The villa, once vibrant, now echoes with silence and the remnants of excess. You stand amidst the aftermath. Spilled wine, discarded wreaths, the lingering scent of incense and ambition. Exhausted yet alert, you reflect on the night's events. Success is measured not in applause, but in the absence of scandal, the preservation of reputations, the subtle shifts in power dynamics. In the world of Roman banquets, you are both conductor and conjurer, weaving together elements of spectacle and subtlety. Your role is unseen yet indispensable, your influence profound yet unacknowledged. As you retreat to your quarters, the city stirs anew. Another day begins, and with it, the cycle of preparation, performance, and preservation continues. In Rome, the stage is eternal, and the show must always go on. The sun rises reluctantly over the tiled rooftops of Rome, casting a copper haze that catches on the marble columns, and the dust rising from the city's pulse. You're already deep in motion. Steps quiet but precise, like an actor who knows every mark on the stage. But this isn't theater. It's politics wrapped in velvet and figs. And you are the one pulling the strings behind the curtains. You are Decimus Flavus, the most sought-after orchestrator of Roman indulgence. Your name isn't engraved on monuments, and statues aren't raised in your image. But those who matter know you. Whispers of your triumphs drift through bathhouses and senate halls like fine incense. The peacock feast of last summer? That was Decimus. The orgy where no one remembers how it ended. Only that they never wanted it to. Decimus again. You were once the son of a humble spice trader from Ostia, and the memory of clove-scented mornings never quite leaves your senses. You learned early. What people taste, they remember. But what they feel, they crave again. And so you rose not with swords, but with cinnamon and spectacle. No army, no slaves, just knowledge, pressure points, social choreography. Today's event, however, is not merely a party. This one matters. Behind its silken veils are motives as sharp as assassins' blades. You've been given just one clear instruction. Make it unforgettable, but discreetly so. And Domitia has her eyes on you. Domitia, the wife of your patron. But so much more than that. Her words are calculated, her presence commanding. She is the sort of woman who can silence a room by adjusting her ring. She communicates most eloquently through disapproval, her frown more scathing than a Roman satire. She remembers details that even gods would overlook. The last party, you placed golden petals instead of crimson. That choice, she said, symbolized cowardice instead of conquest. You didn't know petals could say so much. You suspect she's planning something tonight. The guest list was too curated, the secrecy around the seating chart too meticulous. She wanted Piso and Aurelia, husband and estranged wife, both invited, yet pretended to leave it to chance. She requested saffron perfume, but didn't say where it should be used. And then she mentioned the royal guest. Only once. Lucius Calpurnius Piso, A senator known more for his fury than his speeches is already notorious for publicly challenging a fellow noble to a duel over seating arrangement. He believes in Rome the way a man believes in his own reflection, deeply and vainly. He's used to being the centerpiece, literally, always seated at the heart of the U, where the host normally presides. You'll have to give him that spot. The alternative could end in blood. And then there's Aurelia, Piso's estranged wife, banned from the event. And yet her arrival is inevitable. She has never respected the rules, which is exactly why everyone secretly adores her. Last Saturnalia, she showed up at a philosopher's banquet wearing a tunic made entirely of gold-threaded fishnet. Piso nearly fainted. Tonight, she will bring drama, and you must be ready to cushion every ripple like a silent stormbreaker. Your entertainers are your chess pieces, though more fragile than strategic. Sira, your flautist, is brilliant when sober. That's the problem. Last event, she tripped into a vat of garum and managed to ruin both the music and the bread. She's back tonight, sobered and scolded, but she carries the scars of that humiliation. You've placed her performance early, before the wine loosens her courage too much. Among the staff, you've hired a hand-walking fruit bearer. Yes, it sounds absurd. But in your world, absurdity becomes artistry with the right lighting. This young man can carry a silver tray of figs while balancing upside down. It's a ridiculous talent, but one that makes even the most jaded senator snicker like a boy again. The kitchen buzzes like a battlefield. Cooks whisper arguments over honey glazes and fish stuffing. Your chef, a Gaul named Marrow, insists on roasting the dormice alive, claiming the squeals enhance the flavor. You've had to bribe him with imported wine just to stop the spectacle. Rome is dramatic enough. Your goal is not horror, but seduction. And then, the mysterious guest. A name was never given, only a description. He does not speak often, but when he does, people listen. That kind of vagueness is usually reserved for statues or tyrants. Rumors swirl. Some say he's the emperor's nephew, others that he's the lover of a Praetorian guard. No matter who he is, he's important. And his placement at the feast must reflect that without offending Piso or igniting Aurelia's jealousy. Musicians arrive in disarray. One forgot her strings. Another argues that playing during the oyster course is beneath him. You handle them like you would a pack of temperamental lions. Firm, flattering, and with just enough coin to tame their egos. You've also scheduled a poet, a moody man named Gallus, whose verses border on heresy. He insists on performing a new piece called The Philosophy of Fingernails. You have no idea what it means, but he promised it's brief. The fragrance selection is another battle. Too much rose and the room becomes a brothel. Too much myrrh, and it smells like a funeral. You opt for saffron, warm, sensual, expensive. You personally anoint the hallways and the couches, every corner touched with the golden whisper of spice. Even the latrines smell divine, lavender and cedar, because nothing ruins a party like the scent of desperation. Then there's the seating chart, a nightmare mapped on parchment. Piso demands the center. Domitia must be able to glide between tables without brushing against lesser silk. Gallus refuses to sit next to Sira, citing artistic incompatibility. Aurelia has no seat, but you've prepared one anyway. One she'll pretend to stumble upon, as if fate itself led her to it. Outside, the streets begin to hum. Carriages roll in, cloaks are lifted, perfumes clash. Rome doesn't wait, and neither can you. You take one final look at the preparations. Everything gleams, from the golden goblets to the peacock feathers woven into the centerpiece. It's a feast fit for gods, hosted by mortals, engineered by you. Tonight, masks will fall, wine will flow, and reputations may burn like incense in the braziers. And if all goes well, no one will notice you. That, truly, is the art. Because in Rome, those who seek the spotlight are usually dragged out of it, head first. But you thrive in the shadows, the ghost in the banquet, the name no one dares forget. Before the city had truly woken, before even the birds dared test the morning chill, You were already pacing. The atrium was cool, the marble floor exhaling the night's silence. But your thoughts raced louder than any street hawker. Your sandals tapped a soft beat, pacing past the mosaic of Neptune and the dolphins. Ironic, considering you felt more like a fish being prepped for the fire. The scrolls were unrolled across the planning table like military maps. You checked everything again and again. The fragrance sequence. First saffron in the vestibule, then myrrh drifting down the hallway, finishing with a touch of rose oil by the couches. The kitchen timeline. Honey dormice by the second hour. Oysters served raw but fanned with lavender leaves to keep the scent crisp. Peacocks served last. Tail feathers restored with dyed goose quills for maximum impact. And the handwalker must enter precisely after the first round of fig wine. Any earlier and he's a joke. Any later and a nuisance. A runner brought bad news before you'd had a sip of pomegranate juice. One of the harpists had come down with something. Curse, she claimed. More likely stage fright. You scrambled to replace her with a lyre player from a tavern near the Aventine. Less class, more chaos. But you were out of options. You sent a servant with coins and instructions. Clean her up. Tell her she's performing for Mars himself. And give her the good sandals. The ones with gold. Then there was the matter of the silver goblets. Piso always insisted his wine be served in silver, not gold. Gold is for temples and fools, he once said. But the villa's silverware had gone missing during the last party. Borrowed, perhaps, or stolen. You had to send your assistant, young Milo, who still trembled near aristocrats, to the neighboring domus and negotiate a quiet, urgent loan. Meanwhile, the seating chart caused a headache more vicious than any hangover. Piso, in the center. Fine. But then who flanks him? Not Domedia. She despises the way he chews. Not Gallus. Piso once accused the poet of plagiarizing Cicero, and nearly had him whipped. You moved Sira into the inner corner, partly to keep her away from the wine, partly to act as buffer between warring egos. Aurelia's seat, though not official, had to be perfect. Close enough to be unnoticed, far enough to be deniable. The kitchen screamed with life. The fire roared under the bronze stoves. Mero, your half-mad Gaulish chef, demanded more saffron and threatened to quit, unless he was given permission to recreate the final feast of Caligula. You declined, politely. Instead, you offered him a challenge. Make the boar taste like it had been kissed by the sun. He blinked, said something in Gallic, and dove back into his pots. By midday, the air was thick with anticipation and smoke. Couriers came bearing last-minute notes. One senator canceled, another invited himself. A dancer turned up drunk and crying. Convinced she'd been cursed, you handed her a garland of violets and told her she was the reincarnation of Flora. She smiled, wiped her nose, and asked which god she was supposed to seduce. Outside, guests began circling like vultures ahead of a gladiator match. The streets near the villa filled with gilded carriages and gossip. Your assistants, dressed in matching tunics, faces tight with nerves, took their positions. As the sun began to soften, you took a deep breath. It was time. Time to light the oil lamps. Time to check the wine. Time to pray to every minor deity you'd ever heard of that this evening would not end with someone being carried out by a guard. Act 2. The curtain rises. They came early, of course. Those who arrive early to Roman banquets either seek favor or seek power. Tonight's crowd. Mostly the latter. Piso arrived first, cloaked in white trimmed with purple, his expression smug and expectant. "Where's my goblet?" he barked before even removing his sandals. You handed him silver. He grunted approval and strolled in like Caesar inspecting a province. Domitia appeared moments later, radiant and aloof, her dress the color of bruised grapes and her hair bound with pearls. She floated, not walked. She didn't look at you, but you could feel her scrutiny, like a spear grazing the spine. She surveyed the room and gave the faintest nod. Approval? Maybe. Or just acknowledging that nothing was yet on fire. Sira played, surprisingly, in tune. The air shimmered with music and heat. Saffron danced through the corridors, clinging to togas and skin, Gallus recited a few lines of his latest ode, mercifully short. And you noticed the mysterious guest finally arrived. Young, quiet, no entourage. He took his place with the composure of someone used to being watched. Piso glanced at him and then looked away. Interesting. Then Aurelia arrived. She was not announced. She did not request entry. She simply swept in like a summer storm, golden, bare-shouldered, draped in silk that clung like intention. Every man turned. Every woman judged. Domeia raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Piso's goblet tipped just slightly. You greeted her with practiced warmth. Lady Aurelia, we weren't expecting. She cut you off with a smile. Darling Decimus, no one ever expects desire. Then she glided to the empty chair you had prepared in secret. She sat like it was a throne. Tension rose faster than the fig wine could counteract. Conversations sparked and fizzled, some sweet, some sharp. One senator asked Syra to play a love song from Syria. Another demanded oysters despite having an allergy. You obliged both. Mero stormed in with the peacock, its feathers glistening, and placed it with flair. Applause followed. You bowed discreetly from the shadows. That's when the accidents began. The dancer you'd reassured? She misunderstood her cue and burst into the middle of the dining floor mid-course, flinging violets and shouting, "For Bacchus!" It was dramatic. It was awkward. It was not part of the plan. You clapped politely and had her escorted away with whispered praise. Then Gallus tried to engage the mysterious guest in conversation. Tell me, do you believe the soul can be tasted in a fig? The guest stared at him, unblinking. Gallus laughed alone, then returned to his wine. One of the slave boys tripped, spilling watered-down honey across Piso's sandal. You were there in seconds with a towel and a joke. Better honey than blood, Senator. Piso grunted. Aurelia laughed, too loudly. The feast rolled forward like a barge down the Tiber. Slow, stately, chaotic beneath the surface. You caught problems just before they exploded, switched a harpist seat, diverted a senator away from a rival's concubine, intervened before a debate about taxes turned into a wrestling match. By the 5th hour, the mood had loosened. By the 5th hour, feet rested on cushions, cheeks flushed. Someone requested a reenactment of Venus' birth, using rose petals and a shallow basin of wine. You sighed and waved for the petals. Act 3. Descent into decadence as night fully embraced the villa. The lamps flickered low, casting everything in amber and gold. Shadows deepened. The music turned slower, more sensual. Guests leaned in closer, voices lower, secrets leaking like melted wax. Piso had too much wine. He began telling stories from campaigns he never fought, about places he never visited. Aurelia, sitting nearby, whispered commentary that made her companions choke on their olives. Then came the first real spark. The handwalker entered. Balancing upside down, tray held steady, he paraded between couches to stunned gasps and applause. He bowed, still inverted, and exited. Perfect timing. But the next performer missed her cue. The lyre player, your tavern recruit, had drunk too much mulsum. She stumbled into the garden, vomited into a rosebush, and fell asleep beneath a statue of Hercules. You considered throwing a sheet over her and calling it performance art. Syra, emboldened by praise, played an unauthorized encore, a lusty ballad, best suited for brothels. Gallus wept openly, reciting his fig poem to a half-empty bowl. Piso stood suddenly. He looked at Aurelia, who smirked. Then he looked at the young, mysterious guest. The room quieted. Piso raised his goblet, then lowered it. Decimus, he said, this banquet, this farce, is what passes for Roman excellence now. His voice was thunder without a storm. You stepped forward, lips parted, and Domitia stood. She said nothing, only placed her hand lightly on Piso's shoulder. He sat, instantly. The party somehow continued. Music resumed. Jokes flew. The guests pretended not to have witnessed the crack in the marble. But the tension lingered, like smoke after a fire. By dawn, only a few remained. One senator slept on a bench. Aurelia left arm in arm with someone's bodyguard. The mysterious guest vanished without goodbye. Gallus had written part of a poem on the villa wall in wine. You were too tired to be angry. You walked the room alone, watching the last candles flicker. Feathers lay in wine. Grapes rolled across the floor. One sandal floated in a decorative basin. A spoon rested gently on a sleeping man's chest. And somehow, despite everything, no one had died. That by Roman standards meant success, you smiled. Not because it went smoothly, but because they'd remember it. And they'd come back. Because chaos in Rome is not the exception. It's the attraction. The last fig had been eaten. The last song hummed into oblivion. Rome outside was stirring again, the cool hush of dawn softening the edge of the night's wild heat. You stood among the ruins of success. Silks crumpled like defeated flags. Wine pooled under tables like blood from an invisible battle. Feathers trapped in melted candle wax. A senator was snoring with his mouth open, drooling onto his own laurel wreath. The villa, moments ago a stage of gods, was now a graveyard of gluttony. And then, like a breeze crawling under a locked door, the whisper came. It was the kitchen boy, the one too small to be noticed, but too clever to be useless. He shuffled toward you, eyes wide, voice hushed like a confession. Master Decimus, do you know who the quiet guest was? The one with the black tunic? You paused, brushing crumbs from your sleeve. He didn't give a name. The boy swallowed hard, his voice trembling like an amphora on uneven stone. That's because you weren't supposed to ask. He's the Empress' nephew, sent here not for fun. For judgment, the room tilted slightly. You sat, slowly, on the edge of a low couch, still warm from someone's body. You'd known something was off. The silence, the way everyone deferred to him without realizing it. How Piso, boorish, proud Piso, had paled when their eyes met. He watched everything, the boy whispered, every word, every insult, every time Piso spoke out of turn. Domitia, she planned this. You didn't need to ask how he knew. The kitchens hear everything. Servants disappear behind doors, but ears never close. And tonight the games were larger than wine and seating charts. You looked toward the garden, where Domitia had last been seen, standing like a goddess of dusk in a ring of crushed grapes and whispered rumors. It had seemed so casual, her touch on Pisa's shoulder, the way he sat back down, but it hadn't been persuasion. It had been a signal, a calculated silence. Piso had walked into a net, and you, oh, fool that you were, had woven the silk. Unwitting accomplice, puppet master with no clue who'd written the play. Domitia hadn't hired you for your taste. She hired you for your reputation, because your parties weren't just events. They were spectacles, and when someone falls at the center of a spectacle, everyone remembers. She just needed a place loud enough, chaotic enough, to bury a betrayal in laughter and distraction. A commotion at the gate snapped you back. Guards, not yours. Palace guards, armored not for ceremony but purpose. They moved past the garden statues like they belonged. A moment later they were inside. Piso had not yet left. He was gathering his sandals, scowling at his servant for misplacing a sash. He turned just in time to see the men, and then he was surrounded. No shouting, no struggle. Just a quiet understanding. A man in Rome could be arrested with dignity, so long as everyone agreed to pretend it was for something polite. "Ah, matter of state," one guard murmured. Piso nodded once, stiffly, as if it were an appointment he'd almost forgotten. Then he was gone. The silence that followed was deep. Not empty, but loaded. Like everyone left was waiting to see who else had misjudged the game. You stepped back, into the shadows where you felt safest. Demetia passed by, her robe now unfastened at the shoulder, like a queen shedding her armor after war. She didn't look at you, but as she turned the corner, she said, almost to herself, "A fine evening. Better than expected." That was all. No thanks, no warning, no gloating. Just a line, dropped like a coin into the wishing fountain of your future. She had won, and you had helped. The worst part? You'd done it well. And now, every powerful guest who had attended would whisper about this night. Not just about the wine, or the feathered peacock, or the dancing girl who nearly set the curtains on fire, but about what happened to Piso, about the Empress's reach, about Demetia's ruthlessness, and, inevitably, about you, the man who made it all look effortless. You returned to the atrium as the light grew brighter, touching each surface like a gentle accusation. The fig bowl was cracked. Someone had used the mosaic of Neptune as a urinal. Syra was asleep atop a harp, dreaming, probably, of applause. Gallus had vanished, though the words, "Figs are eternal," remained smudged across the wall in wine. Everything was as it should be, which, in Rome, meant everything was changed. By midday, the story would begin its slow, unstoppable bloom. Piso arrested, no, Piso escorted for questioning. The party, no, the gathering of tastemakers. The Empress's nephew, no, a distant relation visiting for cultural enrichment. The truth wouldn't matter. What mattered was the version told at every bathhouse, whispered by candlelight, retold with giggles or gasps, depending on the audience. And you would be at the center of the tale without being in it. You, who had arranged the incense, balanced the egos, redirected a political war through roast boar and poetry. You had survived. But you also understood, now, the new rule of your craft. You were no longer a host. You were a weapon. The city had returned to its rhythm by midday. Merchants shouting over plums, philosophers pontificating beside sewer drains, and somewhere in the Senate, someone pretending Piso's arrest had been scheduled all along. Rome, after all, excelled at two things: forgetting the truth and repeating it with better staging. You, meanwhile, stood among the wreckage, not of disaster, but of success. Crushed rose petals embedded in marble cracks, sandal straps hanging from statues, and fig seeds in places no fig had any business being. The villa reeked of perfume, wine, and something else. Conclusion, not closure. No, didn't offer that. Just the quiet tap on the shoulder that says, next. You watched as your staff moved like silent stagehands after the final bow. No applause, no curtain. Just the scraping of chairs, the folding of linens, the disappearing of you from memory. Because in this city, no one remembered the hands that orchestrated the storm. Only who got wet. And yet, you weren't bitter. In fact, there was something oddly liberating about it, like being the ghost in someone else's success story. No fame, no monuments, just whispers. And you'd come to love the whispers. You took inventory of the aftermath like a general after battle. One poet missing, presumed drunk. One senator still asleep under a table. 3 new alliances, judging by the swapped togas. 2 broken amphorae. And exactly 1 political takedown, executed with precision and peacock feathers. Not bad for a night's work. The thank you note from Demetia hadn't come. It wouldn't. But she had glanced at you as she left, just once. That was worth more. In her world, silence was gratitude. In yours, survival was a promotion. And somewhere in the folds of it all, past the scandal, the seating charts, the barely contained gods of lust and politics, you realized something you hadn't had the clarity to admit before. You weren't just planning parties. You were managing power. You were the quiet architect of moments that would ripple far beyond the last wine stain. The laughter had faded, yes. The garlands wilted. But the tale would live. But the tale would live. They would say, "Did you hear what happened at that feast?" And someone else would say, "Yes. But did you hear why it happened?" That why was you. And as you wandered back through the villa, barefoot, a little drunk on nothing but exhaustion and timing, you finally allowed yourself a small, smug, very Roman thought. Maybe, just maybe, all of history's turning points didn't happen in courts or battlefields. Maybe they happened on couches over oysters, between verses of bad poetry and the scent of saffron oil drifting under candlelight. Maybe the world is run not by kings or consuls, but by those who decide where everyone sits and what they drink while sitting there. And that's when it hits you. You've become the one thing Rome both worships and fears. A man who sees everything and says nothing. The invisible curator of chaos. The professional denier of coincidence. The human version of a locked drawer everyone's too afraid to open. You smile to yourself. You earned that. And if Rome forgets you, that's fine. You were never in this for statues. You were in it for control, for the delicious, slippery power of being the only one who knows what actually happened, while everyone else gossips around it, like peasants interpreting thunder. You passed the wall where Gallus wrote, "Figs are eternal in wine." The sun has dried the stain into a faint tattoo. It's ridiculous. It's meaningless. It's perfect. Because in the end, isn't that what Rome is? A banquet that pretends to be a civilization. A farce wrapped in soap. A city that believes history is something you can edit, so long as you serve good cheese. You pick up the lone silver goblet left behind and twirl it in your hand. And as you turn to leave, the warm breeze catches your tunic. And for just a second, you imagine the wind whispering a toast. Not to Piso, not to Domitia, not even to Rome, but to you. Because in this city of masks, you threw the best party of the season, without ever taking yours off. And if history is just a series of dramatic dinner parties, then tonight, you were the host of the century.